Okay, thank you very much for joining us today in Plenty of Time. Today's webinar is How to Expand Your Business Horizons with Mobile and Data-Focused PLM, which is brought to you by VisualNext. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. If you do have any problems with your technical side, please drop me a note in the questions box and I'll do my best to help you. I'm Heather and I'm with juststyle.com. And I'll soon be passing you to our expert speakers for today, which is Charles Benoualid and Bonney. But before I do, I'd like to run through just one or two very quick housekeeping points. Following today's presentation, there'll be a live Q&A for around 10 or 15 minutes. If you would like to send in any questions for our speakers, you can do so via the questions box, and we can hopefully put some of those questions to them at the end of the presentation. If we don't have time to answer all of your questions during the session, which sometimes can happen, these will be passed straight to VisualNext and they can then respond to you offline at a later date. Finally, we will be making an audio-visual recording of today's webinar, which will include the Q&A session, and this will be made available to you on Just Style within the next week or so. It will also be sent, a link for it will be sent to you all directly as well once it's available. So let me just briefly introduce today's event for you. As I say, it's called How to Expand Your Business Horizons with Mobile and Data-Focused PLM. So as products become more complex, your expanding mobile workforce needs complete visibility into product information at any time or from any place to enhance decision-making and productivity. This is especially true for modern fashion businesses, where cross-discipline product development teams are required to make concerted efforts to move quickly from catwalk to capture latest trends. Explore with our industry experts today how responsive fashion software and mobile PLM can empower your team to get closer to consumers. Today you'll learn about items such as a new frontier of business collaboration with mobile-friendly PLM, mobile fit sessions, product catalogues and quality control, KPI functionalities making data meaningful, and much more. Today's webinar featuring Charles Benoualid, who is the CEO at VisualNext, and Bonney, who is the MD at PDP Limited. They will delve into the disruptive opportunities making fashion businesses more efficient and more profitable. So here's a little bit about our guest speakers for today, just so you know a little bit about them. As I mentioned, Charles Benoualid is the CEO and Vice President of Research and Development at VisualNext. For over 30 years, his expertise in the RFA industry has guided over 600 global apparel companies in improving their business processes to become more profitable and sustainable. As a provider of omni-channel end-to-end business solutions, including ERP and PLM, VisualNext software is recognized as one of the top industry leaders today. It offers world-class business software to centralize and unify all business processes, consumer touchpoints and supply chains. Bonney is the Managing Director at PDP Limited. Perry has over 25 years experience working in the retail, footwear and apparel software industry, and has applied his extensive experience in his role of Managing Director and owner of Product Development Partners, PDP, to provide strategic direction as well as independent consultancy and evaluation services to high-profile clients the world over since 2007. With over 200 successful implementations of product data management, PDM, and product lifecycle management, PLM, the PDP team is the partnership to ensure a successful PLM project, whether it's a single site or a full global rollout. So without further ado, let me pass you through to Charles and he will give you his full presentation. Over to you, Charles.
Thank you, Heather. It's a very nice introduction, very British, so that's why we brought Perry to help on that end as well, just to make sure that you guys don't feel out of the language. So we have, really focused the current presentation on mobile and big data. Perry and I have been working for many years, so you said I've been 30 years, it's been 25 years, so it's about 55 years together in the fashion industry. And I can tell you that every day this industry changes, and we've been, I think, experiencing humongous shifts and challenges, and along our customers to and see with them how and where the business has gone and where it's coming from. And over the years, we have consistently implemented system whose sole role was to gather data, and very unmobile, very static data collection, where our customers were satisfied with out-of-the-box reporting or even their own specific reports where they are able to report on data. And that's what the trend has been over the years, to be able to report on data, take some data out of the system and analyze it. I think that we can see today a huge shift in that, and as the slides defines this, for the 21st century, I think analyzing this data is going to be a key differentiator to stay abreast and to be the best competitor you can be in an industry that's changing. And we're going to go through what big data has or will bring to the industry, and how in the fashion industry specifically it is different and why it's different. Perry, if we look at the way things are today, what do you see in terms of the changes? And maybe give us an explanation of the different components of data collection. We hear of BI, we hear of big data, we hear of KPIs. How do you feel that fits in the fashion industry right now?
Thank you, Charles. We combine data at the moment from PLM systems, so whether that's the product development information, design, bill of materials, grading, fit, costing information. And typically that's a centralized database. It's a single database that has that information. We may combine that with ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, which is really all the transactional information, the purchase orders, the sale orders, the stock controls, any financial parts of that. And we tend to bring that, so it's what we call transactional data, structured data that we can combine. And we talk about using business intelligence, BI, to be able to look at those particular systems, to see the combination of those datas, and then to use those to give us what we call KPIs, key performance indicators. All right, so that could be, for example, the number of samples per style from all my suppliers. What was the average variation from order quantity to delivered quantity? But we also want to be able to use some of that business intelligence to be able to drill down and see the details. What was the sample rate for this supplier? How often were they late? What was my average margin? All right. We could do that by a range, by a season, a customer, or in some cases even by a designer. How well did their designs work in what we ordered? All right. But there's a lot more data that we could bring in, and this is where we talk about big data. All right. So it's bringing other data. So point of sale data. What did I sell? Where did I sell it? Who bought it? Returns data. Who returned it? Why was it returned? What's the overall? Logistics. Where are my products? Have they left the factory, the port, the ship? When will they arrive? Visibility to all that information. And a lot of other information that we call unstructured data. Particularly unstructured data is things like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. If we combine all that together, that is big data, without a doubt. All right? If we look at there, 35,000 likes a minute on Facebook. Just trying to grasp all that data together and that information is really difficult. If we look at what we call that digital universe, if we look at 2015, all right, there was 4.4 zettabytes of data. Now that's 4.4 with 21 zeros after it. All right. By 2020, that amount of data is expected to grow 10 times. That's 44,000 million bits of information, bits of data that we're trying to analyze. All right. That's a lot of information. you can bear that with every word spoken by the human race since forever, okay? If that was all translated and typed down into text, that's about 5 exabytes. That's 0.1% of that information we talked about. All right, so that's a lot of data. So Charles, what are people doing with that data and what's happening with it?
Well, currently, and those are incredible numbers. I mean, I never heard, I think, of exabytes. I think currently the fashion industry too is feeling a flood of data coming its way, and navigating through this data has not or is not very effective, either because the tools that are out there currently, or the tools that these companies are using, are still not built to leverage such an influx of data. But if we look at just BI, for instance, 22% of retail footwear and accessory businesses, or we commonly refer to as AFA, only 22% have adopted BI as a product. That's a lot lower than most other industries, and yet the other industries encounter a rate of change much slower, far slower than the fashion industry. They use far less information, and I think they're leveraging that data set a lot better than the fashion companies have been over the past, or even currently. Another interesting fact, we've done some surveys, and the fashion industries that are using BI have recorded 54% higher operating margins. That's a real nice slice of profits to go around. So when we look at a slide and we see that 0.5% of data is really analyzed and used, why are we collecting all this data? What is all this data coming to? Today, Perry, a PLM system is used for some basic things. How can we augment what they're currently using? And maybe from your expertise, give us, what are current PLM companies using?
Yeah, I mean, this is a typical areas that PLM addresses. The initial planning, the design, development, sourcing, production, shipping, store, and sell. And it's a loop that we follow around. From what we've sold, we replan, and we go on through. All right, and it's a powerful resource. All right, no doubt about it. But in the majority of cases, it's used to create a tech pack. It's used to track what we're selling with combination with ERP and everything else. All right, it does some very good things: handling design, measurements, target specs, costing, critical path tracking across the process. But PLM really should be so much more. There is so much other things that are in the data, and if we look at some of those that are out there, all right, there's a lot of different areas, whether it's document management, ERP, SCM for supply chain management, or whatever. All right, so there's lots of different, what we would call a network of different data sources that either PLM relies on for information, or PLM can give that information. All right. ERP obviously is the obvious candidate, order processing, financial information. But things like supply chain management, the information about suppliers, point of sale data, which what did we sell, who did we sell it to, but also what got returned from that very information. Combine that with CRM, so start going a little bit further into the consumer relationship management. And it doesn't matter whether you are a retailer, a wholesaler, or at a consumer level, there is a part of CRM that actually is applicable. And they all provide what we call valuable insights to what is really happening. Now, most of this really, technically speaking, it's not rocket science. The information, the tools are out there, all right, and they're in use. But fashion is something that demands speed of speed and rapid change. All right, things change very quickly. We have new trends. Things change. Whether it's a sourcing strategy, a design, or even just the fact that somebody on social media has said this is great and we want to get it. All right, there are not many industries that move as quickly as fashion, all right? And then not many that need to process this amount of information. KPIs, key performance indicators, are only one part of the information, that you use to revolutionise the business. We need to actually use the information across the whole range, both structured and unstructured data. And we have more and more data sources available to us, but more and more data means better tools, more accurate tools, and also being able to use those tools intelligently. There are very successful businesses, whether it's Zara, Nike, Tesla, have already thought very carefully about how to gain a competitive big data advantage. All right? So I'm going to pass it back to Charles and say, Charles, so in the fashion environment, what are the other data sources and things that are available for a big data project?
Well, from the previous slide, we can see that it's the state of affairs. This is how it is today. All these other systems feed different systems, different data set. However, PLM systems today that are connected in a very augmented way to other means, other data sources. Now we refer to these as external data sources. So external to the to the topology of current companies' systems in place is going to enhance the PLM experience, and new sources of data are coming along every day. There's always someone out there that finds a clever way to generate more data. If you remember, and if I go back to the previous slide as well, PLM was always sold as a system that would break the silos of data and expose product development across the company, across the different departments in the company, and that data would be shared. So that was PLM's first real mission, and I think it's done that very, very well. Many of our customers enjoy the ability to have visibility right out of the box of on development of the process, where are we at, where are the goods at. So all these previous connectors that we showed in the previous slide are helping deliver on that PLM promise. But I think that in this change that we are all going through, where e-com, the web, has created a new envelope of data, and I think the ability to capture and share this external data with the designers and the merchandisers and connect them to that data set is going to enhance the way they develop products, sharing retail experience. What are your e-commerce sites telling them? What is the consumer who's buying or returning saying on social media about the product that they've bought? And it's interesting because I was actually last week in a company, and I shared this this thinking with one of the owners, and he looked at me straight in the eyes and he says, I would never let my design team know how their stuff is checking out. It may upset them. And I looked at him and I laughed and I said, really? Sharing this type of information with your designers is going to upset them? Well, I think it's eye-opening that we can actually share with designers and merchandisers what the consumer, the person who's buying the product, is really saying, not some buyer at Walmart or at Macy's who says, wow, this is great, and I'm going to buy 10,000 units. It's really what ends up happening to the product once it hits the retail store, and what are they saying about it? That's where big data is going to help close that loop to that circle of PLM implementations where we plan, we design, we develop. Yes, it's necessary. It's the way fashion goes. But I think fashion is feeling the pinch now of all this e-com information coming back at them. So I think, to answer your question very simply, is if we look at the future, and the future is today, it's important that businesses who have PLM and use PLM to do product development capture, enable their users with that data so that they can make quick decisions. And Perry, this slide I think speaks for itself, right? Technology empowers teams.
Well, it does. You know, at the end of the day, we're talking about huge amounts of data, but even without, you know, it's not something you can sit down at a desk with an Excel sheet and figure out what's going on. You know, technology is the only way we can empower your team, all right, to make better, faster decisions. There's so much data out there. What we really want is this product development information to become more consumer-centric. We design and make what the consumer wants in the sizes that fit, at the right time and in the right quantities. And at the end of the day, that hits the bottom line. Right. And I think, Charles, you can show just how things are happening.
Yeah, and as we talk about hitting the bottom line, as a company, as a technology company, we looked at the growth in big data analytics requirements over the years, and we realized there's a huge market there for our customers to go tap, and we could, you know, share that information or build the tools to enable our customers to go and get this information. So as you can see, the e-com curve is more or less flattening, but I think that there's going to see another spurt on e-com that's going to come, and it's going to be fueled by all kinds of new new data sources, and we need, I think our customers need to establish a big data collection strategy. I think that we know, you know, in terms of strategy from an IT perspective, our challenge is really to engineer this technology so that the data is no longer collected in a BI tool and just sits there and is only beneficial to one department, sales and merchandising or replenishment, but that we consolidate this data and make it a single fluid source that you know, we use the term democratization of data, which means that you should be able to seamlessly integrate information flowing from all systems, ERP, PLM, e-commerce, POS, and share and make that available to the whole corporation at every level. So I think that's in terms of strategy where we need to focus and enable our customers from an IT perspective. On the website, where do you see coming, Perry?
It is a case, you know, e-commerce firms are used to dealing with structured and unstructured data. You know, by structured data, I mean things that are easy to, you know, get. So consumer's name, gender, date of birth, address, what's their sales history, things like that. The unstructured data is what brings the complexities and where a real strategy has to be put together. We're trying to get things like likes off things like Facebook, links, tweets, you know, visuals, where people are putting, you know, things on Instagram and say, well, what do you think about this? All right. And really the big challenge in all this, the big data strategy, is how do we bring those together? Not only just to get the data together, but to be able to analyze it. And that's where, you know, a strategy for it, and have some meaningful insights to increase the conversion of data.
Right. So I think that if we can establish very quickly what are the current trends. The current trends are, I think, more transactional. So they're more transactional, which means they're more marketing enriching than product enriching. I think that big data analytics in terms of today's trends, we call them more that traditional analytics. I think that the big data analytics is going to enable creating new business values, and I think that if internally you understand what big data can bring to your company and what its role in creating the business values, that's going to be key in the next few years because I think it's going to enable you to identify better market positioning, distinguish maybe product characteristics that you didn't know were having some impact on your product development process. And I think that the e-commerce is that window that we've all opened to go and get more cognizant about the data. And today, you know, most people are using data just to give you better pricing, offer you a different product because you like this product, so you must like this product. That's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of data analytics there, but it's not really helping you in fine-tuning your product development and ensuring that you are in line with what the market is telling you, is tweeting about, is Facebooking you about. So, you know, statistics are great because they look at the trends, the current trends are great because they look at how the transactional aspect of the data. And as we move along in big data, I think it's going to be key for fashion companies to get in tune with the other types of data. And I think, Perry, you can talk about this guy. I think he's mastered this whole concept, hasn't he?
It has very much so. They've made a commitment to using big data, and we're just going to take a short look at how they've done that and what they're using it for. I mean, everybody knows Elon Musk. He's the founder of PayPal, made a nice little profit out of that. He obviously owns SpaceX and Tesla, and recently became chairman and largest shareholder of Solar City. He's what we would call in the UK a Marmite character. Marmite is a yeast extract. It's very strong. You either love it or hate it. But whether you love or hate him, you know, he is a visionary. He's a driven leader. He always wants to improve, to invent, but also to reinvent, you know, so to make things better. Just because you invented something doesn't mean to say it stops there. You go back and look at it. So let's take a look at an example of what big data and how Tesla is using things for that. You know, they've been an early pioneer in collecting and processing big data. All of Tesla's cars are, I hesitate to use the words intelligent, but they communicate data back and forward between them and Tesla's home office. All right? A car can provide between 2 and 5 terabytes of data every week. All right? And they use that not only to find out if how well the car is performing, how it's not performing when there is an issue, all right? How the customer is using the vehicle and does it fulfill what they need, all right? And that's primarily at the moment used to drive R&D, all right? So Tesla knows if they've done a whole series of updates, they can process those out to the various cars and move that forward, but also they can use it to get new features, make better decisions, all right, from there. Tesla's notified if a car is not functioning properly. All right, they know they can tell the consumer, the owner of the car, you need to go and take your car in to get serviced, where we will fix the things that are in there.
So are you imagining a sweater wearing a chip and telling you you've gained weight, it's time to go get the next size? Is that how you see it?
Well, you never know.
Never see it, right? You never know. I think it would be a good use of the technology and how it's being used by other industries, and I think that the car industry and the aeronautics industry have more or less grasped this concept, right?
Exactly.
I think that we can see that from the innovation perspective, and it's always an interesting. It's always interesting for us when we are called into a new company and we realize that contrary to the past where companies were driven by designers or ex-partners who broke up the companies, they're actually now coming from an IT world. So fashion is starting to be driven by people, processes, technologies. And I think that's the Tesla example, that they put people first. They understand that if they feed the people with the proper information, they can fine-tune their processes and relate back the technology. And I think that's coming to the fashion industry, embedding, enabling technology into fashion apparel is currently, but I think will be even a greater impact of this data collection. I think on the next slide, looking at data in the fashion business, what are the issues you think we can help resolve with PLM, mobile PLM, data collection? What do you think we can do?
There's a number of areas. I mean, the biggest one, particularly for e-commerce companies selling on the web and everything else, is returns. Returns are really out of control. I was at a client not too long ago, and actually she was talking about her daughter. She has what she calls a shoe party, and basically they will order 15 to 20 different pairs of shoes from an e-com site, get them delivered, okay, bring all the friends round, and then discuss them, rate them, to put information out on e-commerce sites, on social media, but at the end of the day, they probably only buy 1 or 2 of the pairs. All right. Now that's big data is not going to fix that. All right, that's just people taking advantage of what we've put out there. But it is a thing about it gets feedback. We've also got, consumers want to understand more about the product. Where they are purchasing it from, what is it made of, is it organic, how is it ethically made, how do I care for it? Now, we already have RFID technologies, little chips, that actually tell us and we're able to track where a particular item is. The next layer above that is to go to what we call a smart NFC chip, all right, where we can embed different information in it. So we can say, where was it made? We can say, is it organic, ethical, or whatever. We can give you wash care information about how you should care for it. All right, lots of information about that can be put in. Consumers also want to be involved in the whole experience of a garment, a product. All right, that can come either with customization, being able to pick your color, pick your fabric, pick your design that you want. All right. A lot of companies are also using beta testing. Nike, for instance, will send out and communicate with a number of consumers and say, look, we know you like this. Will you try these? Or what do you think we should do with these? Are these what needs to be out there in the market? What changes do we do? What design improvements? And those people tend to be very active social media people. And so as such, you get likes and tweets and everything else. But again, it allows you to only make the designs that work. Right? Consumers want to push their own designs, so we do have made to measure. Can be sometimes a scary concept, but by allowing a consumer to be part of it, they can start to pick their options and give more chance of the sale. They can pick the fabrics, the features, the colors that they want. All of that does have an impact in order quantities. We want more variety. We want more in the store that changes more often. That also means less size of orders. At the end of the day, trends move quickly. Celebrities, sports stars, when they put something on, you see them wearing it at a show or an event or whatever, everybody can see that. It's not unusual for something that's been, a celebrity is wearing, that immediately goes through the roof in sales. If you're not plugged into that trend, you miss it. So we need to be, retailers and brands need to be reactive and proactive, lead those trends and make them come through. So Charles, there's some other things that can be done. What other things are people looking at?
Well, there's a lot of advance in technology in the aspect of data collecting, and one of the biggest one I think we're working with is body scanning technology. And the body scanning technology is enabling companies to actually plan their next market, because you can buy today databases of fit information that are geographically specific. So I can say tomorrow I want to turn to my product to Japan. Is my product going to fit Japan? Well, the PLM systems can collect all this information, can absorb it, and with the analytics that we provide, identify how to adjust all the fits and even the seasonality of the garments. You sell to Australia, you sell to North America, you may be selling to a different demography, but also a different season and a different type of population that's going to wear the garments differently, that's going to socialize with the garment differently. We have companies in Australia that actually use hashtagging to get feedback on fit, and they're providing some of their users with IoT or telephones where they can actually, mobiles where they can actually capture their fit data and feed it back to the fashion provider, so that they can compare to what their specs on the PLM systems are saying, and adjusting these specs. And this is changing the trend also of replenishment. A lot of people replenishment based on standard size curves. We do a 1:1 ratio, and we're content with a 1:1 ratio. We don't really care that the retailer is getting stuck with the extra smalls because we've cut it too small. So I think getting feedback of these types of technology, especially on the fit thing, helps. Making that mobile through PLM capture, which we do really well now, is going to enable these consumers to participate in the product development. There's the other aspect you spoke about, which is the social media aspect, being aware at all times of what's going on and being able to feed your PLM system with this data, but not feed it in a blunt force way. It's feed it through filters that the data analytics tool will work on, understanding pattern, understanding what's being said, removing the veracity or the lack of veracity of some of the information that is being provided by the social media, and feeding back straight data to the designers to say, this is what the customers are saying about the quality of the fabric using. This is the customers are saying about the fit of the garment. And you know, we've looked at some stats lately, and 92% of the consumers, they read reviews before they buy, and that's almost a 10% increase from 2 years ago. And you know, everybody's a star, everybody has an opinion, and 40% of the consumers, you know, by reading what somebody else says, make a decision, are they going to buy it or not? And that's doubled from 2 years ago. So people are more and more confident about what they're reading, and people are making more and more educated decisions about their reading. I myself don't buy anything if I haven't read the reviews of what others have experienced in buying and sharing that product. So again, enabling the users or the designers and merchandisers what reality is saying. I think you have some good insight on data-driven simulation, Perry.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it obviously takes time to create physical samples and everything else. And you don't want to make things that aren't going to happen. You know, design systems now allow full three-dimensional photorealistic rendering of a garment, a product, you know, whether it's a shoe or a bag or whatever, you know, including the fit, color, draping, and even to the stage of user avatar integration. So if you have your avatar, you scanned yourself, either, you know, there's now apps on the phone that will actually give you a body shape that you can use and interact with things. So being able to do beta testing, to be able to let consumers try and see what they think and say, no, make it shorter, make it longer, don't like those colors, those fabrics, whatever. They can get that information, that feedback directly back into the design and the product development process. All right? And you're targeting those consumers, but you're also improving that communication. If they like it, they'll put it on social media. All right? And it allows the consumer to be involved, and it reduces risk. And it's all about reducing risk, using consumers as champions, all right, and allowing those to come on.
Right, and I think that you know, when we bring mobile into the concept of IoT, and I think everybody's more or less familiar with the term IoT, which is Internet of Things. Today, everything is an IoT. Every mobile device enables your consumer to participate. So what we've done in the PLM by making it 100% fully mobile, which means we don't really rely on apps anymore to be specific. We open the PLM to all devices, and by doing that, we could we've trained some of our customers to design portals for consumers to comment directly by taking a picture of a QR code or on the hang tag, and then being redirected to a consumer feedback portal where they can actually feedback about the product they just bought, or if they have positive comments or negative comments. So mobility plays a big role in this data collection, and I think we've addressed a huge challenge that we had in the past. How do we get technology into the hands of users so that the users can use the technology to feed us back? But we didn't have to do that. The mobile, the mobility of the items have done that. Having a mobile phone is actually enabled our consumers to feed back to us, and this is what we really want our customers to do, is to be able to leverage the Internet of Things by enabling their garment, enabling the consumer to communicate back with them, and by strategically, as you discussed before, you know, inserting an NFC chip, inserting an RFID chip, or you know, enabling portals for customers to come and give their opinion. This is going to enable, I think, a lot of reduction in returns, because we're going to understand the reasons of the returns. We're going to be more diligent with our suppliers. We're going to ensure that we share the information with the suppliers. Why are we getting returns? Why are we selling our stuff at markdowns? Because the fit is not right, because the fabrication is not right. So I think that being more consumer-centric now is going to make a big change in the way we collect data, and more importantly, in the way we utilize data, right?
Very much so. You know, it's not about marketing, right? It is always marketing, but it's being consumer-centric. It's closing that loop and bringing that better communication between research, development, which is PLM, and the consumer. You know, focus product development, improve customer service, you know, refine the fit, reduce returns, understand, but also analyze the sales so that we get to sell at full price, not at discounts and anything else. All right, and it's knowing that those products are going to sell rather than just put it out there and see what happens. Okay, so you know, retailers have a lot to gain from, you know, business data analytics, no doubt about it. But it's also, you've got to remember that suppliers, wholesale suppliers, can also benefit. You know, the retailer is their client. And yes, they don't have, you know, the point of sale data very often, all right? But they can use their own B2C, business to consumer channels, or even B2B channels in order to be able to check and do the same sort of things. You know, it just helps. And if you work with the retailer in that, you increase that communication, the assurance, the ability that they know proven supplier, whether it's you stand behind the budget, you get the price right, you get the product awareness right, the technical spec comes through, test results, feedbacks, everything else. And you also establish yourself as a technologically or educated seller. All right, you know the product, you know the market, you know the trends.
Right. I think that buyers today are much more IT-oriented and data-oriented and fashion-oriented. Many buyers come straight out of school and they have great analytical backgrounds. And you know, when you're sitting in front of them and trying to sell them a garment, I think the first thing you need to prove to them is that you understand which department, which class, which category this product is going to complete for them, and what kind of revenue they're going to drive from it, and how do you stand behind your quality, and how do you stand behind your fit to ensure that the garment is put on, sold, and kept, not returned because of fit or quality issues. So I think that that's what the buyers today are expecting in terms of the data that you're collecting, and that some of the retailers are making available to you. I mean, you know, if you have EDI in North America, you can actually tap into the cash register sales on a daily basis, weekly basis, and find out how much of your product is selling at full price, how much of your product is selling at markdown, and you know, what's your markdown going to be, and how do you avoid that? How do you make more money? How do you make your retailer make more money? So I think this is where we see a lot of this big data reflecting back into PLM to educate designers and merchandisers to build the product that the customers or their customers, which is the buyers, really want. And I think that's been our driver, and that's fueled our vision, if you want, of our PLM offering. We have for years collected data in PLM, and we've now provided our customers with tools to enable them to scrape that data, to analyze this data, and we are, you know, we are really pushing our customers to break the final silos of interdepartmental data sharing to enable every department to be aware of what a consumer is saying, to be aware of the market trends and where they're going. We think big data is here big time to stay, and it should be leveraged through all aspects of the enterprise to enable that better profitability and that better visibility across the multiple channels most of our customers now have to face. I think that, to be in good standing at Amazon, you have to be able to guarantee your product. And I think a lot of our efforts in the next, between the mobile PLM we've just released, between the BI tools and the data analytics tools we embed into the PLM system, I think we are, going to enable our customers to allow them to share, collect, and analyze all this data, and that right out of the box. I think that's it. We can wrap it up here. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Perry, thank you very much for participating with me. And we'll open the floor. We'll open the floor to some questions. I think they're going to come through the chat.
Yeah, definitely. If anybody's got any questions out there, because there was a lot of information there to digest, and I'm sure it would have got a few of you thinking. So please send your questions in, and I'll be able to put them to both Charles and Perry. So I've got a couple here already. So I don't know who to direct this to. Maybe you two can decide between you. But here's the first question I've got. You make it sound like implementing BI is an easy task, but in the current state of affairs, how does a business move closer to real-time analytics in 2017?
Well, I think we've said that the data is already there. You're collecting the data. Implementing BI is complex if you have to turn to a third party, and you need to educate the third party into how to leverage the data that you've been collecting. One of the reasons why we make it sound easy is that we've developed a BI tool that comes out of the box with the PLM system and our suite of software. So it has been designed to capture all this information and return it back to the user in an out-of-the-box fashion. So I think we may be making it easy from a visual perspective, but you're right, it may be a little bit more challenging if you need to involve different parties.
Sure.
I think also, if I could just comment on that, I mean, it's also having a strategy and identifying what do you want to analyze. It's not just saying we're going to grab all this data. It's having a strategy of where do we want to get that data from and how we're going to bring it in. All right. As Charles says, if having those tools helps, but you still need to decide what you're going to get and what you expect to do with it.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. Okay, another question for you here. Can you give us examples of data readily available today?
Go on, Charles, I'll let you go.
Go ahead. I mean, I think we've gone through the data sources, but
yeah, it is in some respects. It's the data sources. Point of sale data. It's where the consumer is, what are they buying, what are they returning. It's being able to look at those by the patterns of this city does this, or this region, the north of North America or the south of North America. What are the differences? Whether it's in Europe, Asia, or whatever. Looking at what sells and what doesn't sell. We have that information from a wholesale point of view. We know, what people have taken. We know what's in. How much of products that we have, is at full price? How much is it marked down? We know those. Those are in our ERPs. All right. They're in our other systems that are available. And they're very easy, generally speaking, to get at.
Great, thank you.
The whole, sorry, yes, go on.
No, carry on.
I say, and you've also got obviously all the PLM information, so the product data, what fabrics, what trims, what fit we used. All that information is readily available, is there to be used in that analysis.
Absolutely. Let's hope it's answered somebody's question there. Okay, and finally, what can a business do today to start collecting big data sets?
Well, I think we've identified some of the data sources. To start collecting it is establishing the integration points. So if they have e-com shopping carts in place, then learn how to leverage by building within the shopping cart some very key areas where the consumer is going to participate in the data, both on the return perspective, on the why I'm buying perspective, and then through scraping the different social media sites and collecting that data, passing it through some of the analytics we provide, so that you can identify the things that you want to capture from that data set. The other means of data components are already in place in most companies. They just, as Perry was saying, need to identify which is relevant and which is not relevant, and maybe sometimes you need expertise in educating the different departments in what is relevant and how do you identify if it's relevant and how do you use it in your own means or in your own ways to leverage it in order to provide better products.
Great, okay. We have had another question pop in, and this has got an interesting one. It says, you speak about getting product reviews on social media. Are these random comments or are brands soliciting this conversation?
I think it's a combination. I think random comments are good if you could verify them. And I think Nike does that really well. They solicit the information, and they do that sometimes by in a very sneaky way, where they build forums and chats, and they speak very anonymously about specific subjects, and then they see how others participate, and then they get some interesting feedback from that. The social media aspect has always been the most challenging because it's text, it's unstructured, it's sometimes even unsolicited. But I think being on top of it today creates a huge source of invaluable information.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sorry, Perry, carry on.
No, I agree totally, and it's exactly that. I mean, whether it doesn't really matter whether it is engineered, as long as it's accurate and valid. All right. So whether it's, as Charles says, you put a form out there that allows people to do it, or whether you are just effectively scraping that information of comments that have people made, they're all relevant as long as you can, analyze the veracity, the truth of that information. It's good information.
Yeah, sure. Social media is such an important part of it, isn't it? Okay, here we go. So most big data from social networks and large e-commerce sites is proprietary and not shared, which means we are missing the key part to the puzzle, which is what customers are saying about the products. How do we get past these challenges of access to data?
I think the challenge is sometimes not going out too far and really checking in your own backyard what's available. It is big data, but sometimes you can you can define bots, you can create bots in a very technical way that are going to go and scrape the different sites. Even Skype, as you noticed, has implemented bots in the conversation. So if you're using Skype, you now are privy to scraping through bots the different data or the different people that you're talking to or chatting with. They're legal, of course, staying legal and how you go about doing that is important. But if the big social networks don't make it public, then being able to build your own social environment by creating your own Facebook pages, etc., is going to enable you to collect similar data, maybe not to the extent of what the big sites offer, but more focused, more targeted to your products.
Absolutely. Perry, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that's true. I mean, there is always the legal, but, be involved, be in that social media cloud. By being part of it, you can use that data and have access to that.
Yeah, sure.
As Charles said, there is the technology around by using bots or whatever else, screen scraping, to be able to get that information.
Absolutely. So I think we're done for the day. So I think if anybody has any other questions that they've not been able to get to us in time today, please do send them in. You can send them, the information is there on the screen. You can get in touch with VisualNext via their own website or through Twitter and Facebook, or if you'd like to send any questions directly through to me, heather@just-style.com. I'll be more than happy to pass them through to Charles and Perry for you, and they'll be able to answer you offline. So Charles and Perry, thank you very much for your time today. It's been really interesting, and I hope our readers and listeners have learned quite a lot from you today and taken away some information that they found useful. So thanks again.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone, and hopefully we'll hear from you again soon.